So today I'm going to talk about Enneagram Type 2, and in particular how Enneagram Type 2, their concept of a conversation, the model that the pattern that they normally follow in a conversation, what to expect from an Enneagram Type 2 in a conversation. And I've got some notes here, so I'll be referring to these notes when I look down. So yeah, to begin with, basic summary is they're generally interested in the other person that they're talking to, genuinely interested in them. That's number 1 point. Number 2 point, they don't like talking about themselves. And number 3 point is they give advice a lot. So those 3 points are kind of what this video is going to be structured around. Just flushing those points out. There's a bit of train noise in the background, unfortunately. Anyway, let's get into that. So yeah, the genuinely interested thing, my first point, they are genuinely interested in other people, in what other people have to say. So they're going to be very good listeners. Yeah. Don't confuse genuinely interested in what other people have to say as a form of caring. Now, I'm not saying it's not a form of caring. Sometimes it might be. But they are genuinely interested in what other people have to say out of a belief that they're going to be able to gain something from listening to this person, whether that be important information they're going to gain from that, whether that just be the other person's going to feel in debt to them because they listened to them. So they're genuinely interested in listening because they think they're going to get something for themselves from listening to this person. Which isn't to say sometimes it's not out of caring, but don't confuse the idea of genuinely interested with being meaning caring. And yeah, that idea of being fascinated in what other people have to say, that's probably closer to what I mean by genuinely interested than the word caring. Okay, number 2, the don't self-talk part. Yeah, so they don't talk about themselves, so they don't want to talk about themselves. And a lot. I mean, let's caveat that by saying that all people do like to talk about themselves to some extent, or to a given extent, or to a certain extent. Yeah. But compared to most people, they don't want to talk about themselves. And that relates often to they don't want to be criticized. So that's a big thing about the Enneagram Type 2s. They don't want any form of criticism. And even things that most people wouldn't consider criticism, they're going to take as criticism. Which relates to them being prideful. But when I say they don't want to talk about themselves, don't misread that as they don't like to have conversations. They love to have conversations, Enneagram Type 2. They love social interaction. And, but in that social interaction, they don't want to talk about themselves. They would much rather hear the other person talk about themselves, or the other people talk about themselves. Yeah, and the third point, the advice point, they love to give advice, which comes from the pride again. Like if you think about it, if you're really prideful, you think that you are awesome, right? And so you think that you're in a position to give people advice, which they absolutely believe. It makes me think about this Jerry Seinfeld joke where he said he saw these two homeless people having a discussion. And he was like, you see that and you realize, hey, one of those guys is giving the other guy advice. And so the joke there was that like they're both homeless. So how could either of them be in a position to give anyone advice? But it makes me wonder, hearing that joke, is Jerry Seinfeld a type 2? Because he, that was his concept of what a conversation is, giving people advice. Yeah, and I'm not saying Jerry is, but he might be. Anyway, so those are those 3 points that, genuinely interested in other people's conversation, doesn't want to talk about self, gives advice. Those are 3 pretty significant, commonly held factors that will often be a good model of how an Enneagram type 2 interacts in conversation. So there's some sort of factors that can influence these how the Enneagram type 2 acts, though. And I think it's important to point out the Enneagram type 3 has some totally contrary, diametrically opposed behaviors to the Enneagram type 2, even though it's right beside the Enneagram type 2. And this is a common theme in throughout the Enneagram. Every type has things that are very similar to the type beside it, and it also has things that are often the complete opposite of the type beside it, which is a very interesting phenomenon and plays out very complexly, I'd say, in different personality types. So for example, Enneagram type 3 loves to talk about themselves. They love to talk about themselves. Generally speaking, right? These are all generally speaking. There can be Enneagram type 3s that are very inarticulate. There's inarticulate people in every Enneagram type. And so that might influence these things. It might be like covariables. But when you take that into account, right, that this person's inarticulate, you would still find that they love talking about themselves. The Enneagram type 3 loves talking about itself to the extent that it hates listening to others. Yeah. And so there's some interplay there, right? Because I've just said how this major characteristic of the Enneagram type 2 is that they love listening to others, or they have a genuine interest in listening to others. That's probably better than saying they love listening to others. I wouldn't go that far, but I would say they have this genuine interest in listening to others. And yet they're beside this type that really hates listening to others and just wants to occupy the limelight, the type 3. And so some people will be on that border of the Enneagram type 2 and the Enneagram type 3, whether it be like they're a 3 who's very close to a 2, or they're a 2 that's very close to a 3. And so in those situations, there's, obviously that influences their behavior. So you might see a 3 that doesn't listen as well as, a 2 that doesn't listen as well because they're close to a 3, or a 3 that listens much better than the normal 2, than the normal 3 because they're close to the 2. Yeah. So just checking my notes here. Yeah, they're going to use a lot of coaxes to get the other person to talk, the Enneagram type 2. You can tell me, those type of phrases to get the other person to talk. Because they really want to get the other person to talk often. And it's the idea of political connections is part of why One of the reasons why they're motivated to want to listen to others as well, they find it as a way to make political connections or get information that they can use politically. Not necessarily in a sort of a political party sense, but in a social, politics within social situations, within social groups, that sort of thing. As part of why they're genuinely interested in listening to others. I think that's about it. Sorry for a bit of background noise. Hopefully this has been all right. It's what is it? It's August 2025. Thank you.